The envelope was pinned to our front door with a roofing nail driven clean through the wood. No stamp, no return address, just my name written in block letters that I recognized immediately. Danny Vasquez, Engine 7, the man who'd carried my daughter out of our kitchen when she was 4 and pulled a pot of boiling water off the stove onto her arm. I'd bought him a bottle of bourbon every Christmas since, left it on the hood of his truck at Station 12 with a card that just said thank you. 7 bottles over 7 years. He'd never once come to the door to collect. Now he'd come to the door for this. I pulled the nail out with my fingers, which was harder than it sounds, and left a pale circle of exposed wood the size of a dime. My wife, Tara, was behind me in the hallway asking who was there. And I told her, nobody, just a flyer, because I could already feel the weight of it, the wrongness of a firefighter driving to your house, in the middle of the night, to leave something he couldn't say out loud. I opened it, standing on the porch in bare feet, with the security light buzzing above me. 1 page, handwritten, the letters careful and deliberate, like he'd rewritten it more than once. Marcus, I'm sorry I can't say this in person. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. We all will. The whole department, every station in Harlow County resigned effective midnight tonight. I can't tell you why because you won't believe it. And if I'm wrong, I don't want to be the guy who caused a panic. But I need you to do 3 things. Fill every container you own with water. Don't go to work Monday. And if someone in your family gets a fever, do not take them to the hospital. I'm sorry. I wish I could do more. Danny. I read it 3 times. The 3rd time my hands were shaking, not because I understood, but because I didn't. Danny wasn't the kind of man who dealt in dramatics. He was methodical, quiet, the type to check his gear twice and say nothing. The type who stayed in a burning building 30 seconds longer than anyone else, because he'd counted the shoes by the front door and the numbers didn't match. If Danny Vasquez was scared enough to quit his job and flee the county, then something had already gone wrong somewhere I couldn't see. This was a Thursday, October 9th. By Tuesday, the phone stopped working. By Wednesday, my neighbor Ray Alcott was eating his dog in the front yard, and I don't mean that as a metaphor, but I'm getting ahead of myself. People always want to know about the beginning, the real beginning, and I think that's because they want to believe there was a clean line between before and after. A moment where everything shifted, and you either saw it or you didn't. There wasn't. There was Danny's note, and there was everything I did wrong in the 4 days between reading it and understanding it. Tara found me on the porch. She'd put on her robe, the gray one with the torn pocket she kept meaning to fix, and she had that expression she wears when she's already decided you're being ridiculous, but is willing to hear you out. What flyer takes that long to read? I handed it to her. She read it faster than I did, then looked at me with something that wasn't fear yet, but was adjacent to it. Confusion laced with a thread of instinct she didn't want to follow. What does he mean? Don't take them to the hospital? I don't know. The whole department? All of them? That's what it says? She handed it back and crossed her arms. Marcus, this could be anything. He could be having a breakdown. PTSD. They see horrible things. She wasn't wrong. That was the problem. Every rational explanation I reached for was more comforting than the alternative. And comfort is what kills you in the early days. I know that now. Comfort is the thing that keeps you standing in the kitchen, debating the mental health of a man you barely know instead of filling every bathtub in the house. I went to bed that night with the note folded on my nightstand and did nothing. That was my first mistake. My daughter Lily was 12 then, old enough to sense tension and young enough to metabolize it as personal. She came down to breakfast Friday morning already wired, picking at the skin around her thumbnails, the way she does when something's off in the house. "Why were you guys on the porch at 2 in the morning?" "Just checking a noise." "Must have been a big noise. You were out there for like 20 minutes. Tara shot me a look across the kitchen island. We'd agreed silently, the way long married people agree not to mention the note. "It was a raccoon," Tara said. "Go eat." Lily didn't believe it. I could see that clearly. But she took her cereal to the living room, and Tara and I stood across from each other in a kitchen that suddenly felt like a room where decisions were supposed to be made and weren't. I drove to Station 12 on my lunch break, not because I had a plan, but because I needed to see it empty to believe it. The bay doors were down, which was unusual for midday. No engine in the lot, no turnout gear hanging in the windows. I parked across the street and sat there for 10 minutes before a woman came out of the hardware store next door and told me not to bother. "They're gone," she said. "All of them. My husband tried to report a chimney fire this morning, and dispatch put him through to a station in Grayfield, 40 minutes away." "Did anyone say why?" She shrugged. "Union dispute, maybe. County budget stuff. You know how it goes." I didn't know how it went. Harlow County had never lost its entire fire department in a single night. But she'd already moved on, bags in hand, walking to her car like this was an inconvenience on par with a road closure. That was the texture of those first days. People filing the impossible into familiar categories because the alternative required action, and action required belief, and belief required evidence that hadn't arrived yet. I should have driven to Danny's house. I should have gone to the county building and demanded answers. Instead, I went back to work at the lumber yard and spent the afternoon pricing fence posts for a guy building a deck he'd never finish. That evening, Tara's mother called. June Whitfield, 68 years old, sharp as a scalpel, lived alone in a bungalow 11 miles outside of town on a property she referred to as the land, with a possessiveness that implied she'd defend it with force. She was calling about the firefighters. "It's on the local news," she said. Tara had her on speaker while she chopped onions, and I was leaning against the counter pretending not to listen. Mass resignation. They're calling it a labor action. But Marcus, I know Jerry Pruitt. I've known him 30 years. That man would sooner cut off his hand than leave this town unprotected. Something happened. Mom, it's probably a contract thing. It's not a contract thing. Jerry's wife took their kids to her sister's place in Montana. Montana, Tara. You don't go to Montana over a contract thing. I looked at Tara. She was still chopping, but the rhythm had changed slower, deliberate, like the knife was helping her think. "Marcus," June said, "did you see anything strange at the lumber yard? Sick people? Anything off?" "No. Keep your eyes open. I'm going to stock up on some things this weekend. You should too." After she hung up, Tara set the knife down and wiped her hands on a towel and didn't look at me for a long time. "I want to show you something," I said. I pulled up the local news on my phone. The article about the firefighters was 4 paragraphs long and quoted a county spokesperson who used the phrase, "temporary service disruption." Below it was an article I hadn't noticed before, a small item about Harlow County General Hospital reporting a significant increase in emergency department volume and asking non-critical patients to seek care at urgent care facilities. "That could be flu season," Tara said. "It's October." Early flu season. Danny said don't go to the hospital. Danny's one man. Danny's one man who knew something 4 days before the hospital started overflowing. She picked up the knife again. For 30 seconds, The only sound was the blade on the cutting board. Then she said, "Fine. Tomorrow morning, we fill the bathtubs. We buy extra water. We do one big grocery trip and we don't tell Lily why. If it's nothing, we eat the groceries and drain the tubs. And I get to say I told you so for the rest of our lives." Deal. Saturday morning, I was standing in the water aisle of the Piggly Wiggly at 7 a.m. And I was not alone. There were maybe a dozen people doing the same thing, filling carts with cases of water and canned goods, with the focused efficiency of people who'd received the same memo. I recognized two of them, Paul and Sandra Beckham, from Lily's school. Paul caught my eye across the aisle and gave me a nod that said everything. No words, just recognition. We were the people who'd listened. I didn't know yet how small that number was. I bought $200 worth of water, canned food, batteries, and first aid supplies. At the register, the cashier, a teenager named Devin, whose name tag was on crooked, looked at my cart and said, "You too, huh?" "Me too what?" "Third doomsday cart today. You guys all get the same email or something?" I almost laughed. Almost. But there was a woman in line behind me with a cart that looked like mine, and she wasn't laughing at all. She was watching the parking lot through the front windows with the expression of someone who'd already seen what was coming and was only here to collect what she could carry. I loaded the truck and drove home under a sky so clear and blue it felt like an insult. Tara and I spent Saturday afternoon filling both bathtubs and every pot, bucket, and pitcher we owned. Lily watched us from the hallway with her arms folded. "Are you going to tell me what's happening, or do I have to guess?" I put down the stock pot I was filling and looked at my daughter. 12 years old. Her mother's jawline, my skepticism. Smart enough to sense deception and stubborn enough to resent it. "There's a situation with the hospital," I said. "It's probably nothing, but we're being careful." "What kind of situation?" "They're busy. A lot of sick people." "Like a pandemic?" The word hit the room like a stone dropping into still water. "We don't know yet," Tara said from behind me. "But we're going to be smart, and being smart means having water and food just in case." Lily stared at us for a long moment, then said, "Can I fill the pots in the upstairs bathroom?" I said yes before my throat could close. Sunday was the last normal day, and I didn't know it. Nobody ever does. You're living in the last hour of the old world, and you're mowing the lawn, checking the mail, arguing about what to have for dinner. You're performing normalcy like a ritual that keeps the walls standing. And then the walls come down, and you realize the ritual was never holding anything. I mowed the lawn. Tara took Lily to her friend Morgan's house. I spoke to my next-door neighbor, Ray Alcott, over the fence for 15 minutes about his truck's transmission. And he seemed fine, lucid, friendly, the same mild-mannered electrician he'd been for the 9 years we'd lived beside each other. He asked if I'd seen the news about the firefighters, and I said I had. "Wild," he said. "My buddy at the county says they got spooked by something at a call. Some kind of hazmat thing. Probably overblown." "Probably. You stocked up too, huh? Saw you unloading yesterday." Tara's idea. Smart woman. He went back inside and I finished the lawn, and that was the last real conversation I had with Ray Alcott as a human being. The news that evening was strange. Not alarming strange. The local anchor reported that Harlow County General had gone on diversion, meaning it was no longer accepting ambulances. Patients were being routed to Grayfield Regional, 40 minutes east. There was a brief mention of a respiratory illness cluster, and a statement from the county health department urging standard hygiene practices. The national news didn't mention Harlow County at all. Tara was on the phone with June, who had driven past the hospital that afternoon, and described what she saw. The parking lot was full. I mean, full, Marcus. Cars on the grass. And there were people outside the ER entrance, just sitting on the ground. 20, 30 people. Some of them had blankets. One of them was shaking so hard, I could see it from the road. Did you stop? I'm 68, not stupid. I drove past and came home and locked the door. Monday morning, I called in sick to work. My boss, Frank, sounded distracted when he answered. Yeah, fine. Half the crew called in anyway. Half? Paulie, James, Rick. Rick's wife is sick. Paulie just said he wasn't coming. I wanted to ask more, but Frank had already hung up. I stood in my kitchen holding a phone that suddenly felt like an artifact from a world that was winding down. And I thought about Danny's note, still folded on my nightstand. Don't go to work Monday. The coincidence was too clean. Not because Danny had predicted the specific day. He'd written the note Thursday for a reason. He'd known. Whatever had spooked the fire department, it had a timeline attached to it. They knew when it was coming, and they'd done the math, and decided their families mattered more than their duty, and I couldn't blame them. I'd have done the same. Anyone who says otherwise has never loved someone small enough to carry. Lily's school called at 11 a.m. to announce early dismissal due to staffing shortages. Tara picked her up and they came home to find me in the garage sorting tools and supplies like a man preparing for a siege. Tara didn't say anything about it. She just started helping. By Monday afternoon, the internet was slow, and the local news website was down. My phone could still make calls, but texts were delayed by hours. I tried Danny's number and got a recording that the line was no longer in service. The power flickered at 6 p.m., came back, flickered again at 8, came back, and stayed on through the night. But I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the lights off and the curtains cracked and watched the street. At 2 a.m., a car drove past at high speed with its headlights off. At 3 a.m., I heard shouting from somewhere east. Too far to make out words, but close enough to hear the pitch. Not anger, fear. At 4 a.m., a sound I'd never heard before and hoped never to hear again, a low, wet, grinding vocalization that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, like a moan passed through a machine that stripped it of everything human and left only the mechanics of a throat being used for purposes it was never designed for. I locked the deadbolt, checked the back door, checked the garage, checked every window. Then I went upstairs and stood outside Lily's bedroom door and listened to her breathe for 10 minutes and told myself it was enough. That we'd done enough. That the water in the bathtubs and the food in the pantry meant we were ready. We were not ready. Nobody was ready. Tuesday morning, the cell towers went down. Not all at once, my phone showed 1 bar at 6 a.m., then nothing by 7. Tara's phone lasted until 8. After that, silence. The kind of silence that is, but the absence of connection. Which is worse. Sound is just noise. Connection is the thing that tells you the world still exists beyond your property line. The power held. I turned on the TV and got static on every channel except one, a national emergency broadcast scrolling text over a blue screen. The text read, "Stay in your homes. Avoid contact with symptomatic individuals. Symptoms include fever, confusion, aggression, and loss of motor coordination. Do not approach symptomatic persons. Do not travel unless absolutely necessary. Stay in your homes." Tara read it over my shoulder. Neither of us spoke. Lily was still asleep. She'd always been a late sleeper, and in that moment, I was grateful for it. Because the emergency broadcast was one thing, but what was happening outside was another. Ray Alcott was in his front yard. He was standing near his mailbox in a t-shirt and boxers, which wasn't unusual for Ray on a morning off, except he was standing perfectly still. Not still the way people stand when they're thinking or waiting. Still the way objects are still. There was no movement in his chest, no shifting of weight, no blinking that I could see from our window. He was facing the street with his arms at his sides and his head tilted slightly to the left. And he'd been that way for at least 20 minutes because I'd noticed him when I first came downstairs and he hadn't moved. "Ray's outside," I said. Tara looked. "What's he doing?" "Nothing." "What do you mean nothing?" "I mean, he's standing there. He's been standing there." She watched for a moment, then pulled the curtain closed. "Don't go out there." "I wasn't going to." "Marcus, I wasn't." But part of me wanted to. Part of me needed to believe that Ray was fine, that he was just tired or hungover or sleepwalking, because the alternative was that the thing Danny warned about was already on our street, already next door, already close enough that I could have hit it with a rock from our porch. At 9 a.m., Ray moved. Not in the way people move, smooth, intentional, balanced. He jerked forward like something had pushed him from behind, took 3 stumbling steps toward the street, then stopped. His head rotated, that's the only word for it, toward our house. Not turned, rotated. The motion was mechanical, too smooth in the neck and too abrupt in the stop. And his eyes found our window with a precision that made my stomach drop. He couldn't have seen me through the curtain. But I stepped back anyway. "Tara, take Lily to the upstairs bathroom. Lock the door." "What? Why?" "Please just do it." She heard something in my voice that overrode her questions. She moved. I heard her wake Lily, heard the murmur of protest and then compliance. Heard the bathroom door close and the lock turn. Then I was alone downstairs with the emergency broadcast scrolling its useless advice and my neighbor standing 30 feet away, looking at my house, with eyes that might not have been his anymore. 10 minutes passed. Ray didn't move again. Then a car came down the street, a red sedan I didn't recognize, driving fast, and Ray's head tracked it with that same mechanical rotation. When the car was gone, he turned back to our house. Then, slowly, he began walking toward our front door. I had a baseball bat in the hall closet, Lily's old aluminum bat from her brief and disastrous softball career. I took it out and held it, and felt absurd and terrified in equal measure. A man holding a child's bat in his own home on a Tuesday morning, waiting to see if his neighbor was going to knock or do something worse. Ray reached the edge of our lawn, stopped, stood there. His mouth was open, and I could see from the living room window that something was wrong with it. The lips were cracked and dark, and there was a line of fluid running from the corner of his mouth down his chin that caught the light. His eyes were open, but they weren't searching. They were fixed, locked. He stood at the edge of our lawn for 45 minutes. Then he turned around and walked back to his yard and sat down on his front steps and didn't move again for the rest of the day. I didn't let Tara and Lily out of the bathroom for another hour. When I finally went up and knocked, Tara opened the door with a look that was equal parts fury and terror. "Tell me what's happening." "Ray's sick." "How sick?" The emergency broadcast kind of sick. Lily was sitting on the edge of the bathtub behind her mother, and her face was the face of a child who has understood something she shouldn't have to understand yet. Not fear exactly. Recognition. The recognition that the adults in her life were no longer performing competence. They were improvising. "Are we leaving?" Lily asked. The question was directed at me, and it carried more weight than 3 words should be able to hold. Because leaving meant the car, and the car meant the street, and the street meant Ray and whoever else was out there. But staying meant waiting, and waiting meant trusting that whatever was happening would resolve. And nothing about the scrolling blue screen or my neighbor's mechanical neck or the fire department's mass exodus suggested resolution. "Not yet," I said. "But soon." We lasted in the house until Wednesday afternoon. 31 hours of curtains drawn and voices low, and the TV cycling the same emergency text until the power finally died at noon on Wednesday, and took the last thread of institutional reassurance with it. In those 31 hours, I watched the street through a gap in the living room curtains the width of 2 fingers. Here is what I saw. Tuesday evening, a woman I didn't recognize walked down the center of the road, carrying a child who was too still. She wasn't running. She wasn't calling for help. She was walking with the deliberate pace of someone who'd already been to every door and found them locked. She passed our house and kept going. And I didn't open the door. And I've thought about that every day since. Tuesday night, screaming from the Beckham house 3 doors down. Paul and Sandra, the couple I'd seen at the Piggly Wiggly. The screaming lasted about 4 minutes, and then stopped in a way that didn't suggest resolution. After that, a shape moved across their front yard in the dark, too fast for a walk, too uneven for a run. I pulled back from the curtain and didn't look again until dawn. Wednesday morning, Ray was in his yard again, but he wasn't alone. There were 2 others with him, a man and a woman I'd never seen before. They stood in a loose cluster near his mailbox, all facing slightly different directions, all motionless, like a group waiting at a bus stop in hell. "There are 3 of them now," I told Tara. She was in the kitchen, rationing our food into meal-sized portions on the counter. Canned corn, canned beans, peanut butter, crackers, the last of the bread. Lily was upstairs in her room, doing what 12-year-olds do when the world ends, writing in her journal. "We need to go to Mom's," Tara said. It wasn't a suggestion. June's place was 11 miles southeast on a county road that ran through mostly farmland. No close neighbors, well water, a wood stove, a pantry that June kept stocked the way her Depression-era parents had taught her, deep and rotational. "The car's in the garage," I said. "Garage faces the street. We open the door, they'll hear it. Then we go out the back and walk. 11 miles, with Lily. Lily's tougher than you think. It's not about tough, it's about speed. If those things can move fast, I saw something at the Beckham's place last night, Tara. It was fast." She stopped sorting cans and looked at me. "Then what do you suggest?" I'd been thinking about it all night. The back of our property bordered a drainage easement, a shallow ditch that ran south for about a 1/4 mile before connecting to a gravel maintenance road. From there, it was farm roads and back lanes most of the way to June's. We'd be exposed in open fields, but we'd be away from houses, away from clusters, away from whatever Ray and his new friends had become. We go out the back fence, follow the drainage ditch south, pick up Miller Road and take it to Highway 9, then cut through the Dawson farm property to your mom's access road. That's 15 miles, not 11. 15 miles with no houses is better than 11 with whatever's happening on Main Street. Tara held my gaze for a long time. Then she nodded. We packed 2 backpacks, water bottles, canned food, the can opener, the first aid kit, the 1 flashlight with good batteries, a change of clothes each, and a utility knife from the kitchen. I took the bat. Tara took the largest kitchen knife and put it in the side pocket of her pack where she could reach it. We put Lily in her hiking boots and her warmest jacket and told her we were going to Grandma's. Through the back? Through the back. Because of the sick people. Yes. She pulled on her backpack and tightened the straps and didn't cry and didn't argue. And I thought, she is going to survive this. Whatever else happens, this kid is going to survive. We went out the back door at 1:15 p.m. on a Wednesday in October. The air was cool and smelled like cut grass and wood smoke and something else underneath, something faintly chemical, like chlorine or ozone, that I'd been smelling since Monday and hadn't been able to place. I went over the back fence first, then helped Lily, then Tara. We dropped into the drainage easement and crouched there for a moment, listening. Birds, wind, nothing else. The houses on our street were visible above the fence line, and from this angle, I could see Ray's cluster, still 3 figures, still motionless, still facing the street. We moved south, staying low in the ditch. The mud sucked at our boots, and Lily slipped twice and caught herself both times without making a sound. Tara walked behind her with one hand on Lily's pack. I walked ahead with the bat in my right hand and the drainage ditch stretching before me like a path I had to trust because I'd run out of better options. 12 minutes into the walk, I saw our first body. It was in the ditch, half submerged in the brown water that collected at the lowest point. A man, face down, wearing a work jacket and jeans. I stopped Lily before she could see and told Tara to cover her eyes, but Lily pushed Tara's hand away. I can handle it. You don't need to. Dad, I can handle it. She looked. I watched her look. Her face didn't change, which scared me more than if she'd screamed. She processed it a dead man in a ditch and filed it away and kept walking. 12 years old. This was the new curriculum. We skirted the body by climbing up the east bank of the ditch and walking along the edge of a soybean field for 50 yards before dropping back in. The gravel maintenance road appeared ahead exactly where I'd expected, and I felt a small, fragile surge of competence. The plan was working. We were moving. Miller Road was empty. No cars, no people, no infected. Just gravel and fence posts and the long flat geometry of Harlow County farmland stretching to the horizon under a sky that was offensively beautiful. We walked in silence for 20 minutes before Lily spoke. Are they zombies? We don't know what they are, Tara said. They look like zombies. Ray looked like a zombie. We don't have enough information to... Mom, are they zombies? Tara looked at me. I looked at the road ahead. Something's making people very sick, I said. It changes their behavior, makes them aggressive. That's all we know. So, zombies. Lily? It's fine. I just wanted to know the word. She walked ahead of us for a while after that, 5 or 6 paces, close enough to grab, but far enough to claim a small island of independence. I let her have it. There are moments when a child needs distance more than protection, and this was one of them. We reached the junction of Miller Road and Highway 9 around 3 p.m. This was the first real decision point. Highway 9 was paved, wider, more exposed, but faster. The alternative was cutting through fields, which added miles and offered no cover beyond chest-high crops. We took the highway. For the first mile, nothing. Then a car appeared ahead, pulled onto the shoulder at an angle that suggested it had stopped in a hurry. Doors open, engine off. A smear of something dark on the driver's side window that I chose not to examine closely. Don't look at the car, I said. Dad, Don't look at the car, Lily. We passed it on the far side of the road. Inside I looked. I couldn't stop myself. The front seats were empty. The back seat was not. I kept walking. Half a mile later, we heard the first one. It came from the tree line to our right, a sound like the one I'd heard Monday night, but closer, wetter, more defined. That grinding vocalization, a throat being used as an instrument of something that had nothing to do with the speech. Tara grabbed Lily's arm and pulled her close, and I raised the bat and scanned the trees. Nothing visible. The sound continued for about 10 seconds, then stopped. "Keep moving," I said. "Stay on the road. Stay together." We walked faster. The sound didn't return, but it didn't need to. It had established presence. It had told us the tree line was occupied. The fields on either side became charged territory, every shadow potential, every rustle of wind through the crops a possible approach vector. At 4:15 p.m., we turned off Highway 9 onto the unmarked dirt road that cut through the Dawson farm. The Dawson place was a large property cattle operation mostly, and the access road ran through open pasture for about 2 miles before connecting to the county road that led to June's. I'd been back here once before, helping Frank deliver fence posts, and the landscape was as I remembered it. Flat, treeless, completely exposed. The cattle were gone. Every pen, every field empty. Tom Dawson had 300 head of beef cattle, and they were all gone, which meant either Tom had moved them or something had scattered them. Given what I'd seen of Tom Dawson's commitment to those animals, the second option seemed more likely. We were a mile into the Dawson property when Lily stopped walking. "Dad." She was pointing south toward a cluster of farm buildings, barn, equipment shed, a small foreman's house. Between the buildings, in the dirt yard, there were figures. 5, maybe 6, standing in that same loose, directionless cluster I'd seen at Ray's mailbox. They were at least 400 yards away. At that distance, they were just shapes. But the posture was unmistakable, that slack, tilted, mechanical stillness. They weren't working, they weren't resting. They were something else, something that used to be people, and now ran on different instructions. "We keep going," I said. "Stay on the road, don't run." "Why not?" "Because I don't know if running makes them notice us." That was the truth. I had no intelligence, no manual, no understanding of what triggered them. Ray had tracked the car. Ray had walked toward our house. Were they drawn to movement, sound, something else? We walked. The figures didn't move. 400 yards stayed 400 yards, and then became 500, and then 600. And then they were behind us, and I allowed myself to breathe. June's access road appeared ahead, marked by the leaning mailbox she'd never replaced. The bungalow was visible in the distance, small, weathered, solid. And in the front yard, standing on the porch with a lever-action rifle across her chest and a look of profound, unsurprised determination, was June Whitfield. "Took you long enough," she said. June had been preparing since Friday. The woman was 70 years behind the eyes and 200 years in her bones, the kind of rural pragmatism that doesn't wait for confirmation before acting. She'd filled her well-housed storage tank, inventoried her pantry, split a cord of firewood, and driven to 3 different stores across 2 counties, buying ammunition, medical supplies, and enough canned protein to last months. "The freezer's full too," she said, leading us inside. "But that's only good as long as the generator runs, and I've got maybe 2 weeks of diesel." The bungalow was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that opened into a living room. But it was set back 300 yards from the county road, surrounded by open pasture on 3 sides and a thick line of hardwood trees on the 4th. Good sight lines. Only one approach that offered cover. "You see anyone on the way?" June asked. I told her about Ray, about the figures at the Dawson farm, about the sound in the tree line. She nodded like I was reporting weather. I saw my first one yesterday, Tommy Oakes from the feed store. He was walking down the county road at about 2 in the morning. I know it was 2 because I was up checking the generator and saw him through the kitchen window, walking right down the center line. No coat, no shoes. I turned on the porch light, and he stopped and looked at the house for about 30 seconds and then kept walking. Did he seem aggressive? He seemed gone, like someone had scooped out whatever made him Tommy and left the body running on fumes. Lily had gone straight to the back bedroom, the one June kept for her, with the quilt and the bookshelf and the small window that looked out at the tree line. I could hear her unpacking her bag and arranging things with the deliberate focus of a child building a nest. Tara sat at the kitchen table and put her face in her hands, and stayed that way for a long time. June put a hand on her shoulder, once, briefly, then went to the stove and started heating soup. "The radio still works," June said. "AM. There's a station out of Grayfield that's been broadcasting, mostly repeating the same government message: stay home, avoid contact, help is coming. But this morning, there was a man. Not an official broadcast. He broke in on the frequency. Said the hospitals in Grayfield were gone, overrun. Said the infection moves through fluid contact, saliva, blood. Said the incubation is 12 to 20 hours. Said once they turn, they don't come back." "Turn into what?" Tara asked from behind her hands. June ladled soup into bowls. "He didn't use a word for it. He just said they stopped being people." We ate in silence. The soup was good. June's tomato basil, made from canned tomatoes she'd put up herself in August. It tasted like the old world, like a kitchen where nothing was wrong. I ate 2 bowls and felt guilty for both of them. After dinner, I walked the perimeter of the property while there was still light. The pasture was empty, the tree line quiet. The county road was visible from the front yard, a gray ribbon cutting through brown fields, and it was deserted in both directions. The nearest neighbor was the Kimball place, about a mile north, a dark house, no vehicles in the drive, no signs of life. I found June's rifle on the porch where she'd left it and picked it up and checked the action. Lever action .30-30, well maintained, fully loaded. I'd hunted with my father as a teenager, and the mechanics came back like a language I'd stopped speaking but hadn't forgotten. The weight of the rifle in my hands produced a feeling that I recognized as false confidence, the belief that a tool is the same as a solution. When I came back inside, June was at the kitchen table with the road atlas open, marking routes with a red pen. "If this gets worse, we need options," she said. "South is open country for 60 miles. East takes us to Grayfield, which is apparently gone. North is the interstate, which will be gridlocked or blocked. West," she tapped the map. "West is the state forest, remote, water sources, defensible terrain. You want to go into the woods? I want to have a plan for the woods. Having a plan isn't the same as using it." She was right. She was usually right. But the idea of leaving the bungalow, this small, solid, stocked shelter that still had walls and a roof and a lock on the door, felt like giving up the last fixed point in a world that had gone liquid. "We stay here as long as we can," I said. "We set watches, we conserve food and water, and we don't open the door for anyone we don't know." June looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "And if someone we know comes to the door sick?" The question sat between us like a living thing. "Then we don't open the door for them either," I said. She nodded, but we both knew saying it and doing it were separated by an ocean of human weakness, and we were standing on the wrong shore. 3 days passed. 3 days in the bungalow with the curtains drawn and the watches set and the radio cycling the same dead broadcast. 3 days of rationed meals and whispered conversations and the particular claustrophobia of people who love each other, living in close quarters under terminal stress. Lily adapted faster than any of us. She established a routine wake-up, eat, read, help June in the garden for an hour during the midday window we designated as low risk, read again, eat again, write in her journal, sleep. She asked fewer questions than I expected and answered more. She was the one who suggested we inventory every room and write down exactly what we had. She was the one who found the hand-crank radio in June's closet and got it working. She was the one who, on the second day, looked at me and said, "We should have a signal if one of us gets sick, so the others know." What kind of signal? Like a word, something you'd only say if you were still you. We chose cardinal. Lily's choice. She said it was because cardinals don't migrate. They stay where they are and survive the winter. I thought it was because the word was specific enough to be difficult for a degraded mind to produce. But I didn't say that. On the third night Friday, by my count the radio changed. The government broadcast cut out mid-loop and was replaced by a voice I didn't recognize. Male, middle-aged, exhausted. "This is Sergeant Dean Calder, National Guard. I'm broadcasting from the Harlow County Fairgrounds. We have a perimeter. We have medical. We have supplies. If you can hear this, we are accepting civilians. Route 14 south to the fairground entrance. Identify yourself at the gate. We will not fire on civilians. I repeat, we will not fire on civilians. We are here to help." Broadcast repeats on the hour. The four of us sat around the radio and listened to it repeat twice. Then June turned it off. "Fairgrounds is 7 miles northwest," she said. "I know where it is. Could be real. Could be." Tara's eyes were bright in the lamplight. "If they have medical supplies, antibiotics, real first aid, and security." "We have security here," June said. "I have a rifle, a shotgun, 400 rounds, and clear sight lines." "Mom, you have one rifle, and you're 68 years old." "My age has nothing to do with... If they have a perimeter, they have manpower, vehicles, communications. We're 4 people in a house. We're 4 people alive in a house. That counts for something." They looked at me. The deciding vote, the tiebreaker, the man whose job it was to make the wrong decision and live with it. I thought about Danny's note. The last useful intelligence I'd received from anyone. And the only piece of it I hadn't followed. If someone in your family gets a fever, do not take them to the hospital. Don't go to the institution. Don't go where the sick people gather. Stay away from the places that draw crowds. "We should send someone to check it out," I said. "One person, light and fast. Go to the fairgrounds, assess the situation, come back." "Who?" Tara asked. "Me." "No." "Tara." "No, Marcus. You're not leaving us here. Someone has to go and someone has to stay, and I'm the fastest, and I know the roads." "I'll go," June said. We both stared at her. "I'm serious. I know every back road between here and the fairgrounds. I've lived here 40 years. I can take the truck, be there in 15 minutes, assess, and be back in 30. "The truck makes noise," I said. "Everything makes noise. The question is whether the noise attracts them. And from what I've seen, they're drawn to proximity, not sound." Tommy Oakes didn't react to my generator, but he stopped when I turned on the porch light. "I think it's visual." It was a theory, untested, based on a sample size of 1. But June said it with the conviction of a woman who'd been observing the world longer than any of us, and trusted her pattern recognition more than our caution. "Dawn," I said. "You go at dawn when there's light to see, but early enough that the roads should be clear. If you're not back in 2 hours, we assume the worst. If I'm not back in 2 hours, you take my atlas and go west into the forest like I said." She went to bed. Tara and I stayed up, sitting across from each other in the kitchen with a single candle between us, and said nothing for a very long time. "I should be the one going," I said. "Probably, but she's right that she knows the roads better, and she won't take no for an answer. If something happens to her, then we deal with it, the way we've been dealing with everything. Badly, but alive." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her grip was stronger than it used to be. Everything about her was stronger: the set of her jaw, the steadiness of her gaze, the economy of her movements. Tara had been a project manager before the outbreak, the kind of woman who made spreadsheets for vacation packing. Now she was rationing calories and sharpening knives and watching the tree line with the patience of someone who'd been born for this and didn't know it until now. "I love you," I said. "I love you too. Go check on Lily." June left at 5:45 a.m. in her old Ford pickup with the headlights off and the lever-action rifle on the seat beside her. I stood on the porch and watched her taillights disappear down the access road. And then I went inside and started the longest 2 hours of my life. 1 hour passed. Lily was asleep. Tara and I sat in the kitchen and didn't speak. I cleaned the shotgun, June's 12-gauge pump, and checked every window and checked them again. The radio played static. The pasture outside was gray with pre-dawn light and perfectly empty. 90 minutes. I walked the perimeter. Nothing. The county road was vacant. The Kimball place was still dark. A crow sat on the fence post by the access road and stared at me with one black eye, and I stared back. And neither of us blinked. 2 hours, no truck, no dust on the road, no engine sound in the distance. 2 hours and 15 minutes. I was at the kitchen table with the atlas open, plotting the route west, when I heard the engine. I grabbed the shotgun and went to the porch, and there was June's truck coming up the access road, trailing a cloud of gravel dust. Behind it, my stomach clenched, was a second vehicle. A black SUV with a crack in the windshield and mud on the fenders. June pulled into the yard and got out moving faster than I'd seen her move in years. Behind her, the SUV doors opened and 2 people emerged. A man in his 30s wearing a National Guard uniform with no insignia, and a woman about my age in civilian clothes carrying a medical bag. "This is Corporal Wade Jessup and Dr. Nina Chowdhury," June said. "The fairgrounds is gone." Wade Jessup was tall, thin, with the particular hollowness of someone who'd been running on adrenaline long enough to burn through everything else. He looked at the bungalow, the tree line, the sight lines, and I could see him making tactical calculations the way June had made them days ago. "We had the fairgrounds secured until last night," he said. His voice was flat, the inflection stripped. 43 civilians, 8 guard. Someone came in symptomatic and lied about it. By midnight, we'd lost the medical tent. By 2 a.m., we'd lost the perimeter. Calder ordered evacuation, but the vehicles were blocked, and I got out with Dr. Chowdhury and 4 others. "Where are the other 4?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Dr. Chowdhury did. "We got separated on Route 14. There was a group of them, a large group, maybe 20, moving south along the road. We went east, the others went west. We drove until we found the signal." "What signal?" "Your porch light," June said. "I left it on." "The visual trigger. Once June had been right, they responded to light. And she'd left our porch light on as a beacon, which was either brilliant or catastrophic, depending on who else had seen it. I turned it off. Over the next hour, we learned what Wade and Nina knew. The infection was spreading faster than any containment could match. Fluid transmission bite, scratch, any open wound exposed to infected saliva or blood. Incubation ranged from 6 to 20 hours. After turning, the infected retained basic motor function and some rudimentary problem solving. They could open unlocked doors, navigate obstacles, track movement. They did not speak. They did not sleep. They did not appear to eat in any purposeful way, though the things they did to the bodies they caught were— Nina paused here, choosing her words. Not consistent with feeding behavior. Then what is it? Tara asked. Transmission behavior, Nina said. They're not eating. They're spreading. The room was quiet for a long time after that. Lily was standing in the hallway. I didn't know how long she'd been there or how much she'd heard. She looked at Wade's uniform, at Nina's medical bag, at the faces of people who'd seen things worse than she could imagine, and said, "How many are there?" Wade looked at her. Something shifted in his face, a softening, almost imperceptible, that told me he had children or had lost them. "A lot," he said. "More every day." We reorganized. 6 people in a 2-bedroom bungalow demanded structure, and structure was the thing that kept us from turning on each other in those first tense hours of cohabitation. Wade was useful immediately. He mapped the property, identified blind spots, and established watch rotations that gave everyone 4 hours of sleep. He was quiet and efficient, and never gave orders. He made suggestions with the directness of someone accustomed to command, but aware that he was a guest. June respected him, which was the highest compliment she could offer a stranger. Nina was different. She was intense, precise, and struggling. I could see it in her hands, a fine tremor she tried to hide by keeping them busy. She unpacked her medical bag on the kitchen table and inventoried what she had. Antibiotics, painkillers, bandages, suture kit, 2 vials of sedative, and an EpiPen. Not much. Enough to treat injuries. Not enough to treat what was actually killing people. I was an ER physician at Grayfield Regional, she told me on the first evening. We were on the porch splitting watch. I saw the first cases come in a week before the firefighters quit. 3 patients, all from the same neighborhood, all presenting with high fever and extreme agitation. We coded 2 of them. The third one— She trailed off. The third one got up off the gurney after we pronounced him. He came back? No, he never left. We thought he was dead, but the infection had already taken over motor function. His heart was still beating. We just couldn't detect it with standard monitoring. He got up and he bit the nurse, Sarah Combs, 26 years old. She turned in 14 hours. She was quiet for a moment, watching the dark pasture. I reported it to the hospital administration. They told me to file an incident report. File an incident report, Marcus, for a dead man biting a nurse. I called the health department. I called the CDC tip line. I called everyone I could think of, and by the time anyone took it seriously, the ER was full of them, and it was too late. Is that how the firefighters knew? They were the ones responding to the calls. They saw it first, the addresses repeating, the injuries that didn't make sense, the patients who fought restraints with strength that shouldn't have been possible. Jerry Pruitt, the captain at Station 12. He came to the hospital and saw what was happening in the overflow tents, and he made the call, told his people to get their families and go. He could have warned the public. He tried. He went to the county commissioner. The commissioner told him it was a personnel matter, and that if the department walked out, they'd all lose their pensions. Jerry walked out anyway. They all did. Danny's note. Danny, who couldn't say it out loud because he'd been told not to. Danny, who drove to my house at 2 a.m. and put a nail through my door because it was the only thing left he could do. I made a mental note to find Danny Vasquez when this was over, if there was an over, and give him more than bourbon. The first real test came on Sunday, day 5 at the bungalow. I was on morning watch, sitting on the porch with the rifle across my knees and a cup of cold coffee June had made on the wood stove, when I saw movement on the county road. A group, 8, maybe 10, moving south in a loose formation that wasn't a formation. They didn't walk together so much as walk in the same direction at the same time, like a flock of birds operating on shared instinct rather than communication. I went inside and woke Wade. He came to the porch and glassed them with June's binoculars. Mixed group, male and female, various ages. They're moving with purpose. See how they're all tracking the same direction? Something's drawing them south. What? Could be anything. Sound, light, movement. Could be other survivors. We watched them pass. They stayed on the county road, 300 yards from the bungalow, and none of them turned toward us. It took 12 minutes for the group to clear our sight line, and in those 12 minutes, nobody breathed normally. When they were gone, Wade lowered the binoculars and said, "We need to talk about what happens when a group that size comes up the access road instead of passing by." That afternoon, we fortified. Wade and I strung June's barbed wire across the access road in 2 lines, low enough to trip anyone moving at speed. We stacked hay bales from the barn as barriers on the east and west approaches. June nailed plywood over the ground floor windows, leaving narrow gaps for observation and, if necessary, firing lines. Tara organized supplies into grab bags, 1 per person, ready to go if we had to run. Lily helped with everything. She hammered nails. She carried bales. She filled water containers. She did it all with a grim, focused energy that was nothing like the nervous thumbnail-picking girl from a week ago. The outbreak was burning away everything soft and leaving something hard and necessary in its place. And I didn't know whether to be proud or heartbroken, so I was both. That night, for the first time, we heard them close. Not on the road, not in the pasture, in the tree line, 50 yards from the back of the house. That grinding vocalization, but plural overlapping, layered, a chorus of broken throats, producing a sound that wasn't communication because there was no information in it, just presence, just announcement. We are here. We are here. We are here. Nobody slept. The second week broke us open, not all at once in pieces, the way real collapse works. It started with the well. Wednesday morning, Tara went to draw water, and the pump produced a thin, rust-colored stream that smelled like metal. June checked the well house and found the problem. The generator that powered the pump was overheating, running rough on the last of the diesel. We had days of fuel left, not weeks. Without the well, we're on stored water, June said. That gives us maybe 10 days if we ration hard. There's a creek on the Dawson property, I said. 1/2 mile through the tree line. The tree line where we've been hearing them every night. Yes. Wade volunteered for the water run. I said I'd go with him. Tara said nothing, which was her way of saying everything. We left at midday with empty jugs and the rifle. The tree line was dense oak, hickory, a few pines, and the light came through in broken columns that made shadows move where nothing was moving. We walked in silence, stepping over roots and deadfall, stopping every 30 seconds to listen. The creek was where I'd expected it, running clear and steady over a gravel bed. While Wade filled jugs, I stood watch, facing the trees, the rifle up. "You were military before Guard?" I asked. "Infantry. 2 deployments. Iraq. Afghanistan. Helmand. Is this worse?" He was quiet for a long time, screwing the cap on a jug. "In Helmand, the enemy was human. You could predict them because they wanted things you understood. Territory, ideology, survival. These things don't want anything. They don't retreat. They don't negotiate. They just keep going until they reach you or break apart trying. Nina said they're not feeding. They're spreading. Yeah, that's the part that keeps me up. A predator you can outsmart. A virus with legs that's different. It's not hunting you. It's just expanding. You're not prey. You're geography." We filled 6 jugs and started back. Halfway through the tree line, Wade stopped and raised his fist, military signal for halt. I froze. Ahead, between 2 oak trunks, a figure, standing in that signature stillness. Female, middle-aged, wearing a floral house dress that was torn along one side. Her arms hung at her sides, and her head was tilted at an angle that suggested the muscles on one side of her neck had stopped working. Her eyes were open and clouded, and they were pointed at us. We didn't move, didn't breathe. She stood there, 10 yards away, close enough that I could see the dried fluid on her chin and the purple-black discoloration spreading from her jawline down her neck. The infection made visible not rot exactly, but transformation. The body being repurposed from the inside out. 30 seconds. A minute. Sweat ran down my temple and I didn't wipe it. Wade was a statue beside me, the jugs perfectly still in his hands. The woman's head moved that mechanical rotation, scanning the trees to our left, then back to center, then to our right. Her eyes passed over us twice. On the 3rd pass, they stopped. She saw us. I know she saw us. Her mouth opened, and that sound came out, the grinding, the wet mechanical drone. And every nerve in my body fired at once. Wade moved first. He stepped backward slowly, 1 foot behind the other, and I matched him. The woman took a step forward. 1 step, then stopped. Her head tilted further, almost perpendicular to her shoulder. And she made the sound again. Then something in the woods to our left crashed through the underbrush, and her head snapped toward it, and she moved fast, shockingly fast in that direction, away from us, through the trees, and gone in seconds. We ran. Not proudly, not tactically. We ran with the jugs banging against our legs and branches whipping our faces, and we burst out of the tree line into the pasture and kept running until we reached the bungalow and slammed the door behind us and stood in the kitchen gasping and dripping creek water on June's floor. What happened? Tara was already there, already reading our faces. "We got water," Wade said, "and we're not going back." That night, I made a decision I should have made days ago. I gathered everyone in the living room and said it plainly. "We're leaving. The water won't last. The tree line is compromised. We saw a group of 10 on the road, and the ones in the woods are getting closer. This position isn't sustainable." "Where?" June asked. "West, the state forest, like you said." She nodded. No argument, no satisfaction at being right. Just the quiet acceptance of a woman who'd been waiting for the rest of us to catch up. We'd leave at dawn. We didn't leave at dawn. At 4 a.m., the barbed wire on the access road sang. Wade heard it first, a high, Thin vibration transmitted through the fence posts and into the ground, audible if you were lying on the floor, which Wade was, sleeping beside the front door with his boots on. He woke me with a hand on my shoulder and a finger to his lips. Through the narrow gap in the plywood, we could see the access road in the moonlight. 3 figures tangled in the wire, not struggling to free themselves, but pushing forward with a mindless, mechanical persistence that was worse than struggling. The wire cut into their legs, and they kept walking, kept pushing, the barbs sinking deeper with every step. And they made no sound of pain, because pain requires a self to feel it, and they had no self left. Behind them, on the county road, more shapes, a dozen, moving toward the bungalow. "They found us," Wade said. "The porch light, from days ago. Maybe, doesn't matter now." I woke the house. Tara and Lily were dressed and packed in 3 minutes, those grab bags Tara had prepared, the only piece of foresight that mattered now. June was slower, not from age, but from grief. She stood in her kitchen and looked at the stove, the table, the window over the sink where she'd watched 40 years of seasons change. And I saw her say goodbye to it in the space of a breath. "Let's go," she said. The plan was the back door, west through the pasture, into the state forest. Wade went first with the rifle, then Lily, then Tara, then June. I came last with the shotgun and the knowledge that behind me, the first 3 figures had torn through the barbed wire and were moving up the access road with that relentless, unthinking forward motion. The pasture was moonlit and exposed. We moved fast across the dry grass, our shadows stretching long behind us, and I kept looking back. The figures were at the house now. I could see them in the pale light, clustering at the front porch, pressing against the plywood. And one of them was at the back door, the door we'd left open, and it went inside. Something about one of them entering June's house, moving through her kitchen, standing where we'd eaten meals and rationed hope, felt like a violation more intimate than violence. It felt like proof that there was no shelter, no fixed point, no place solid enough to hold. We reached the tree line at the western edge of the property, and Wade hesitated. This was different forest than the creek side, thicker, darker, less familiar. But behind us, the county road was filling with shapes, and the bungalow was lost, and there was nowhere else to go. "Stay tight," Wade said. "Hand on the person in front of you. Step where I step." We went in. The forest at night is a sensory overload of absence. You can't see, so you hear everything, every branch crack, every rustle, every shift of air. Lily's hand was on Tara's pack, and Tara's hand was on Wade's, and June's hand was on mine, and we moved as a chain through the dark, trusting the man at the front to find ground that wouldn't betray us. 20 minutes in, the forest floor began to slope downward. We were descending into a hollow, the kind of terrain feature that occurs throughout the state forest, steep-sided, creek-bottomed, difficult to navigate in daylight. In the dark, it was treacherous. June slipped and I caught her arm and felt how thin it was under her jacket. "I'm fine," she whispered. "Keep going." At the bottom of the hollow, Wade stopped, listened. Nothing. The sounds from the bungalow were gone, absorbed by distance and forest. For the first time in hours, the world was quiet. "We rest here," Wade said. 1 hour. Then we keep moving west." We sat in the creek bed in the dark with our backs against the slope. Lily leaned against Tara, and Tara held her. And June sat beside me with the atlas on her knees, useless in the dark, but present. A talisman of planning in a world that had outrun all plans. Nina, who had been silent since we left the house, spoke from the darkness. "There's a fire tower, about 12 miles west, near the top of Garner Ridge. I've seen it on maps. If it's still standing, it's elevated, defensible, isolated. 12 miles through this terrain could take 2 days, Wade said. Then it takes 2 days. Nobody argued. The fire tower became the plan, because we needed a plan. And because movement, any movement with a destination, was better than the alternative. 1 hour. Then we stood up and kept going. I'm going to compress the next 36 hours, because they were both the longest and the simplest of my life. We walked. We hid. We walked again. The forest was large enough to swallow us, which was its gift and its danger. We saw infected twice once, a lone figure standing in a clearing at dawn, head tilted, unmoving, and once a pair moving through the trees at a distance, their silhouettes visible against a gap of sky. Both times we stopped, waited, and detoured. Both times they didn't see us, or didn't pursue if they did. The terrain was the real enemy. The state forest was unmanaged, deadfall everywhere. Ravines cutting across our path, ridgelines that rose and fell without logic. June struggled. She didn't say so, didn't complain, but I could see it in her pace, which slowed through the first day and slowed further through the night. Tara walked beside her, matching her speed, and neither of them acknowledged the accommodation. Lily hiked like she'd been born to it. She was the first to spot the lone infected in the clearing, the first to hear water when we needed it, the first to find the trail, because there was a trail. Midway through the second day, following Nina's compass bearing, we intersected a maintenance path, overgrown but navigable, marked with faded orange blazes on the trees. State Forest Service Trail. It pointed west, uphill, toward the ridge. "This is it," Nina said. "This leads to Garner Ridge. The tower should be at the top." The trail climbed, steeply, relentlessly, through switchbacks that added distance but reduced the grade just enough to keep June moving. We stopped every 30 minutes for water and rest. Wade ranged ahead, scouting the trail, and came back each time with the same report: clear. The infected seemed to be concentrated in the lowlands, near the roads, near the infrastructure of the old world. Up here, there was nothing for them, no houses, no lights, no people, except us. We reached the ridge at dusk on the second day. The fire tower was there, a steel-frame structure about 60 feet tall, topped by a cab with windows on all 4 sides. The stairs were intact. The cab door was closed. Nobody home. Wade climbed first, then me. Then we helped the others up. The cab was small, 10 feet by 10 feet, with a central map table, a pair of binoculars bolted to a swivel mount, a cot, and a storage locker containing the most beautiful thing I'd seen in 2 weeks. A hand-crank emergency radio that worked. From the tower, we could see the world. The state forest spreading in every direction, green and brown and endless. The ridge running north to south like a spine. In the distance, east, a column of smoke rising from where Harlow County should have been, not one fire but many, scattered across the landscape, sending up threads of black that merged into a haze across the horizon. Tara stood at the east window and looked at the smoke and didn't say anything. I stood behind her and looked at it too. Somewhere under that haze was our house, our street, our kitchen, where Lily pulled boiling water onto her arm and Danny Vasquez carried her outside. Somewhere under that haze was everything we'd built and accumulated and believed was permanent. "We're safe here," Wade said, but even he didn't sound certain. "For now," June corrected. "For now." The 2 most honest words in the English language. We were safe for now, We had water from a spring Wade found 100 yards below the tower. We had food for maybe 10 days if we rationed. We had elevation, sight lines, a defensible structure with a single staircase entry point. We had a radio that could receive and, with the right frequency, transmit. We had each other. 6 people who'd been strangers 12 days ago, bound now by the only thing that matters when everything else is stripped away. Shared survival. That night, Lily came to me on the tower deck. The sky was clear and the stars were obscene in their beauty, the kind of sky you only get when every light on the ground goes out. Dad? Yeah. Are we going to be okay? It was the question every parent dreads, because there are only 2 answers, and neither one is true. Yes is a lie. No is cruelty. What's left is the space between, which is where all honest love lives. We're alive, I said. We're together. We have a place to stand. And tomorrow, we're going to figure out the next thing. That's what okay looks like now. She leaned against me, 12 years old and 1,000 years in her eyes. Cardinal, she said. Cardinal, I said back. We sat under the stars and listened to the silence, which wasn't silence at all, but the sound of a world rearranging itself into something unrecognizable. Somewhere below, in the forests and the fields and the ruined towns, the infected moved in their ceaseless, purposeless expansion, not hunting, not resting, not dying, just becoming more. The mathematics of it were simple and merciless. Every survivor they reached became one of them, and every day the ratio shifted further. And the question was not whether humanity could win, but whether enough of it could survive to remember what winning used to mean. But that was tomorrow's math. Tonight there was the tower and the stars and my daughter breathing beside me and the sound of June and Tara talking quietly below. And Wade cleaning the rifle and Nina writing in a notebook she'd carried all the way from the fairgrounds observations, symptoms, timelines, the scientist in her refusing to stop working even at the end of the world. We were still here, damaged and diminished and terrified, but here. And that was enough to build on. It had to be. The radio changed everything. On the 3rd morning in the tower, Wade found a frequency. Not the dead government broadcast, not Sergeant Calder's loop. A new voice. Female, young, steady. This is Cedar Point Camp, broadcasting daily at 0600 and 1800. We are a civilian settlement located in the western state forest, approximately 40 miles from the Garner Ridge Fire Tower. We have 112 survivors. We have clean water, sustainable food production, medical facilities, and perimeter security. We are accepting new arrivals. Approach from the north via the Ridgeline Trail. Identify the outer marker. We will not turn you away. This message repeats. 112 survivors, sustainable food production, medical facilities. The words sounded impossible, like a language from a country that no longer existed. But the broadcast was clear, consistent, professional. Someone had built something out there in the woods. Someone had refused the math. 40 miles, June said. 4 or 5 days at our pace, Wade said. I can make it, June said, and the way she said it defiant, absolute, told me she wasn't sure. We spent the day preparing. Filled every container with spring water. Packed the remaining food. Nina organized the medical supplies into a belt pouch she could access without stopping. I studied the atlas, plotting the ridgeline route, identifying water sources and potential shelter points. Lily sat at the map table in the tower cab and wrote in her journal. I asked her what she was writing. Everything, she said. In case someone finds it later. We're going to make it. I know. But someone should write it down anyway. She was right. Not because we might fail, but because the story mattered regardless. The story of 6 people who left a bungalow in the dark and walked through a forest toward a voice on a radio because that was the only act of faith left available. We left at dawn. Wade in front, Nina behind him. Then Lily, then Tara, then June, then me. The same chain, the same formation, the same fragile thread of trust stretched between us like a lifeline. The ridgeline trail was narrow but passable. The elevation kept us above the lowland concentrations, and the few infected we spotted were far below, moving through the valleys like slow water seeking a level. They didn't look up. I wondered if they couldn't, if the degradation of their motor function had taken that from them along with everything else. On the second day, June fell. Not dramatically, she just stopped walking and sat down and didn't get up. Tara was at her side in seconds. I need a minute. Take all the time you need. I said a minute, don't hover. But a minute became 5, and 5 became 10. And June's face was gray, and her breathing was labored, and Nina checked her pulse and her blood pressure with the manual cuff from her bag and said nothing, which was worse than saying something. "Mom," Tara said, "I'm fine. I'm just tired." "You're not fine. I'm 68 years old and I've walked 30 miles in the wilderness in 4 days. I'm tired. That's not the same as not fine." She stood up. She kept walking. And I saw something pass between her and Tara, not a look exactly, but an understanding. An acknowledgement that the timeline had changed. That we needed to reach Cedar Point not eventually, but soon. On the 3rd day, the trail widened. On the 4th, we found the outer marker, a wooden post painted bright orange with the words Cedar Point Camp and an arrow pointing north. Nailed to the post was a laminated sheet of paper with instructions. Follow the marked trail, keep hands visible, announce yourself at the gate. We followed. The trail led through a stand of pines and then opened into a valley, broad, green, bisected by a creek that ran clear and fast over clean stones. And in that valley, impossible and real, was a settlement. Not a camp, a settlement. Structures, some tents, some cabins, some buildings framed with fresh-cut lumber. A garden the size of a football field, rows of green visible even from the ridge. A perimeter fence of stacked logs and wire. People moving between buildings with purpose, with order, with the ordinary rhythm of life continuing in defiance of everything outside the fence. A man met us at the gate. Young, bearded, carrying a hunting rifle with easy familiarity. He looked at us, 6 exhausted, filthy, half-starved people standing at his gate with everything they owned on their backs, and he smiled. "Welcome to Cedar Point. When's the last time you folks ate a hot meal?" Lily started crying. Not the quiet, controlled tears of a 12-year-old protecting her dignity, but the open, shaking sobs of a child who'd been holding everything together for so long that the relief of being allowed to stop was more than she could contain. Tara held her. June sat down on a log by the gate and closed her eyes. Wade shook the man's hand. Nina asked where the medical facility was. I stood at the gate and looked at the valley and felt something I hadn't felt since the night I read Danny's note on the porch in my bare feet. Not safety. Safety was a concept from the old world, and it wasn't coming back. What I felt was simpler and older than safety. Possibility. The possibility that what was left of us was enough. I'm recording this 6 weeks after we arrived at Cedar Point. The settlement has grown to 153. We've expanded the perimeter, built 3 new cabins, and established a second garden on the south slope. June is running the food stores. She sits in the supply cabin every morning with a ledger and a pencil and the exact expression she wore in her kitchen in the old world. And she is exactly where she belongs. Lily goes to school. There's a teacher here, a woman named Grace, who taught 7th grade in the old world, and she holds classes in a canvas tent with a chalkboard made from a painted plank. Lily sits in the front row and asks questions that nobody has answers to yet. Wade leads security. Nina runs the clinic. Tara builds things literally, physically, with her hands and a hammer and wood from the forest. She's building a cabin for us, 4 walls and a roof. It won't be large, but it will be ours. Danny Vasquez is here. He arrived 2 weeks after we did, walking out of the forest with his wife and 2 kids, and a look on his face that told me he'd seen everything and carried most of it. I gave him a bottle of whiskey we'd distilled from fermented apples, the closest thing to bourbon I could manage. He took it and looked at me and said, "I'm sorry I didn't knock." I told him the nail in the door was enough. At night, from the ridge above the valley, you can see the dark world stretching in every direction, no lights, no roads, no signals. Just darkness and what lives in it. But inside the fence, there are lanterns, cook fires, voices, the sound of people choosing every day to remain people. I don't know what comes next. Nobody does. The infected are still out there, still expanding, still rewriting the math. But inside this valley, a 12-year-old girl is learning algebra, and an old woman is counting cans, and a doctor is treating patients, and a soldier is standing watch, and a man is writing down what happened so that someone, someday, will know. We stayed. We're still here. Cardinal.